Hi everyone, I'm back. It is Global Trends course for New Abyssinia College students, and last time we started chapter 1 about international relation. What is international relation? What are the actors of international relation? And how the present, which means the international relation system we are following right now, developed through history, and we also saw international analysis of international relation. Today we will continue from what we have stopped last time, which is the structures of international system. The structures of international system. As we said last time, international relation is a determinant factor which helps countries to fulfill its interests, to get economic advantage, to get political advantage, and also to influence the international system and get benefited from some. So the international system have different structures through history. And in the international relation, political power is usually distributed into three main types of systems. Three main types of systems, the whole international relation. The first system is called unipolar system. In the unipolar system, there is one superpower, and that superpower controls the world. It becomes a peacekeeper, which becomes the influencer, which becomes also a peace broker in the international system. For example, between the breakdowns of Berlin Wall, which happened in the 1990s, after that, until the present time, it was the United States of America, which is the superpowers of the international system. And before the United States, or before the First World War, Great Britain controlled the world and became, it was a superpower for a very long time. So in this type of system, we call it a unipolar. That means one superpower controls the other world, or many of the activities in the world are influenced by one country. The other structure is bipolar system. In the bipolar system, two competing superpowers and followers in each side competes to become the main influential factor in the international system. If you hit of a Cold War, it was between Russia and United States of America. After the end of World War, which was in 1945, these two countries was equally powerful to influence other countries. And every country should have been a member of either of these two sides. If you are a communist, you will be in the sides of Russia, and Russia will protect your interest. And if you are a capitalist, you will become in the sides of United States of America. And there was this very fierce competition for these countries to influence the international system. In these types of bipolar system, there is always, and at least most of the time, there is this zero-sum game types of politics. One country wants to influence the other, becomes better than the other, became able, wants to control most of the world. And if you remember, in the dark region, we were in the sides of Russia, because by that time it was must to be part of, or members of, either of the two sides. And before dark, in the times of Emperor Haile Selassie, we were in the United States of America side. And these two sides were the main influential powers in the international system. Right now, after 2010, and in this time, China became the other superpower because Russia was breaking down. Russia is no more a superpower in the world system. And this time it is China and United States competing to become a superpower in the world politics. And these two powers created a bipolar systems of international relations. And these two countries are the main deciding forces in the relationship between countries. The other international relation system is multipolar system. In the multipolar system, there are many equally powerful countries, that is more than two powerful countries. And these countries have their own influence in the world system. And in the multipolar system, it is mostly a very dangerous arrangement for international relations. For example, before World War First, there was a lot of powerful countries. Germany was a powerful country. England was a powerful country. Russia and America and Japan, all these countries was powerful, and there was no any superpower in the international system, and that created World War First. Even in after World War First, in before World War Second, these things happen again, and this is mostly this existence of more than two powerful countries in the international system mostly creates these international wars. That means unipolar and bipolar systems of international structure is better, at least to have a relatively peaceful relation among countries. So when you think of these structures, we need to understand these three concepts. The first concept is power. What is power in the international system? If you study economics, if you all have a chance to study economics, in economics there is currency. Every country has currencies, like there is birr, there is dollar, and in economics they are like the way to express one country is rich or poor. And in the international relation, it is power which determines international relation. For example, in economics, what determines your right to purchase a bread is if you have a currency. When you have money, you will have a right to buy everything you want. In international relation, your influence is depend on your power, and it determines the relative influence of actors, and it shapes the structures of the international system. So from where we can get power, or the source of power for countries, is for some of them it is their economy, for the others it is their military, for the others it is their even their history. So power is the main factor or currency in the international relation. For example, in the world, United States, USA have the highest power. It is because they have the biggest economy, they have the biggest army, and they have the biggest sophistication in the information technology. So this power means when you have the capacity to influence other countries. It is when country X makes country Y to do something it would not otherwise do. When United States says something, most countries in the world fulfill their demand. If they want, they can change the government, they can create economic development for countries and a lot of things, and that is called power. And power can be defined in terms of both relative and material aspects. And it is power is defined by the capability of countries to influence others. So in this time, as I told you, there are a relatively bipolar system. It is between China and United States. They are both powerful, and they always exert their power to influence other countries. The other concept you need to understand from these systems of international relation is anarchy. Anarchy is, in a literal term, it is a situation where there is absence of authority. This means in Amharic, you can call it bit, or there is no አለቃ የሌለበት system ማለት ነው. So anarchy is a situation when there is absence of authority, but it is a national or international global levels of system. It is different in national and international system. In national system, anarchy means when there is war. ብጥብጥ ማለት መንግስት የሌለ ሆኖ በህዝቦቹ ወይም ህዝቦቹ ተከፋፍለው ጦርነት ምናምን ሲፈጥሩ we call it anarchy, but in the international system there is no government which can control the actions of different actors. So the international system is full of anarchy. You might hear of war in the Middle East. If you can, you hear war in Syria, in Libya, in even in another countries in the Arab. And there is even in Southern America and even in Africa, there is a lot of war. And this war is the result of the anarchic systems of the international relation. In international relation, anarchy refers to a system where power is decentralized and there is no shared institution with the right to enforce common rule. That means power is decentralized. It means every country have its own right, responsibility, different from the other countries. That means one country does not have a right to influence the other country, even if they do that every time. In these situations, the country depends on itself and its alliance for security. So in the present international relation system, your situation or your peace or your existence is dependent on your capacity to protect yourself and the alliance you create with powerful states. For example, in the negotiation between Egypt and Ethiopia for the Great Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, if you hear of United States of America supports Egypt because they have a lot of interest in Egypt to keep the securities of the Middle East. So we were vulnerable in the situation. What we can do is to side with China and to bring China on the board and ask them to support us. So when we bring them, it creates a balance of power in the negotiation. So the peace and the security of a country is dependent on your strengths and how many alliances you create with powerful countries. The third term you need to understand is sovereignty. Sovereignty. It is an autonomy of foreign policy and independent of freedom in its domestic affairs. This includes two main concepts. The first thing is a state's ultimate authority within its territory, ultimate authority from its territory. That means the country have the right to do anything it wants in its territory without the interference of the external party, and it also means it is involvement in the international system. That means there is international system. We said there is United Nations, there is World Trade Organization, there is World Health Organization, and those types of organizations. That means every country will participate in these international organizations and international systems equally. That means internal sovereignty, that no country will involved in our internal affairs and external sovereignty, which is a right to have involvement in the international system. So when we understand these three terms, we will continue to theories of international relations. From our first class, from our first episode, we said international relation is very difficult to understand. Why we are poor, why there is a war in the Arab countries, why we can't fill our dam by ourselves, why we can't export some product, why we became importer. All these things have been affected by the international relation, and the international relation affects pretty every part of our life. And in the international relation, we said it is difficult to keep the international system safe and stable. So different peoples or scholars develop different ideas, what they think explains the international system. So theories of international relation allows us to understand and try to make sense of the world around us through various lenses, each of which represents different theories. So we can understand the world and what is happening every day by using these theories. And these theories are important, and understanding these issues is important because, as I said last time, international relations affects our life every day. It is part of our activity. We fly to other countries, we import products, we export products, other people want to have influence on us. So it is pretty much our existence is dependent on it. So there are different theories of international relations. The first theory is called idealism or liberalism. Liberalism in international relations was referred to as an utopian theory, and it is still recognized as to some degree today. So this theory was called, it is utopian theory. That means utopian means perfect theory, and it is still have some influence in the international system. And this theory is pretty old theory, and it is proponent views that human beings are innately good and believe peace and harmony between nations is not only achievable, it is desirable. So, based on idealists in international relations, achieving peace is possible. And they believe human beings are good and achieving peace is possible. And also they believe peace is very important. It is desirable. And it was first developed by Immanuel Kant in the 19th century. And it states that shared liberal values should have no reason for going to war against one another. They believe humans are good. Because humans are good, it is possible to create peaceful relation among countries. That means if one country becomes peace, and if it develops a democratic system, they believe that country will not have a reason to go to war with another democratic country. And in Kant's eye, the moral liberal states that were in the world, the more peaceful the more states were in the world were peaceful, the more it will become like in peace. And that means liberality and peace are two sides of one coin, since liberal states are ruled by their citizens, and citizens are really disposed to desire war. So people are good people will create liberal types of government, liberal states will not have a reason to go war. That means world can be peace. They believe world peace in the world is achievable. And this theory was the dominant one between 1990 and 1930. This was a time between the First World War and the Second World War. And they developed the theory after the First World War because it was very devastating, and they believed by developing theory we can avert a next war. But it was uh, disproved by the Second World War, because they just propagated this idea. But after even the propagation of this idea, the world went for another war, which was a Second World War. And they believe the presence of eliminations of war lies on the preference of democracy over aristocracy. So they believe human beings are good and they can create a democratic system, and this bureaucratic system will create free trade, and this free trade will create interconnection among countries, and this interconnection will create a need for collective security and balance for power. That means የሰው ልጆች በጣም ጥሩ ናቸው ብለው ያምናሉ። የሰው ልጆች ጥሩ ከሆኑ ደግሞ ጥሩ የሆነ ገቨርንመንት ወይም ዲሞክራቲክ ገቨርንመንት መፍጠር ይችላሉ። ያኛው ዲሞክራቲክ ገቨርንመንት ዲሞክራት በሆነ አስተዳደር የሚመራ ከሆነ ሁለት ዲሞክራሲን የሚያራምዱ አገሮች ወደ ጦርነት መሄድ አይፈልጉም። ዲሞክራሲ ሲሆኑ ደግሞ ነፃ ንግድ ይስፋፋል። ነፃ ንግድ ሲስፋፋ አገሮቹ ንግድ ሁኔታቸውን አፌክት ስለሚያደርግባቸው ወደ ጦርነት አይሄዱም ነው። So this is the idea of the liberals. And liberals international, the liberals believe the international system has two pillars. That means democracy, the first one, and free trade, the second one. In free trade, which requires the establishment of international relations, which would promote collectivism, collectivist aspiration in place of the conflictual relation which formed the basis of balance of power in thinking. So by creating democracy and by allowing free trade, it is possible to keep the world peaceful. And this resulted the creation of League of Nations after the end of the World War First, and which were the results of the liberal ideas of international relations. And League of Nations, it was founded as a guarantors of international order. The idea behind League of Nations was to create an organ through which it can manage international problems by arbitration and keep the world in peace. However, this League of Nations doesn't survive, and it collapsed in 1931 when the World War II started, and the failure becomes difficult for liberals to comprehend because the event seems contradicts their theory, and the theory lost its crown. So Second World War happened, and people's belief of liberalism or liberal idea of international relation also lost its fame with the Second World War. Even if it's lost its fame after the Second World War, liberalist idea of international law still continues, and they believe international law offers mechanism by which cooperation among states is made possible. By creating international law, we can make cooperation among countries possible. And international law refers to a body of customary and conventional laws which are binding on civilized states in their intercourse with each other. So international law means it is rules and regulation, either it is customary or conventional. It is prepared and accepted by all of the countries. That means the signatory countries, and the liberals believe this international law can manage international relations. And the international relation provides a normative framework for political discourse among members of the international system. That means it creates normative framework. That means a way or a setup for countries to solve these problems by arbitration or by court. And this international law serves to function. One is to provide mechanism for cross-border interaction, and the other is to share the value and goals this interaction are pursuing. So law enables countries to interact, or that means it prepares the groundwork or the regulation on how these two countries interact or make relationship, and it also shapes the values and the goals of this interaction. And as you said, the idea of liberalism lost its fame after the breakout of the Second World War, and it is a result is another theory of international relation, which is realism, and which believes liberal policies are unrealistic in real world. They believe liberal policies or liberal theory of international relation is unrealistic. And realism as a school sort of centers on the view that the international system is anarchic, in the sense that it does not have all-encompassing authority. As we said, the liberals started with human beings are good, good people can create good governments can make peaceful, lasting relationship. But on the other hand, these realists believe this idea is not true. and they believe the international system is anarchic ወይም የዓለም አቀፉ ሲስተም በብጥብጥ የተሞላ ነው ብለው ነው የሚያምኑ and they believe there is no authority which can manage this system. So where domestic society is ruled by a single systems of government, the international systems of states lack such basis and renders international law non-binding and ultimately ineffective in regulations of international relations between states. As I said in the first idea of liberals, they believe international law can regulate the international system and they believe people are good. So they believe good people with international law, with free trade, and with democracy, they believe creating lasting peace is possible. But in here, they think that is not possible. The world is anarchic, there is no authority which can manage the international system, and international laws are not binding. Not binding means የዓለም አቀፍ ህግ ልክ እንደ አንድ ሀገር ህግ አስገዳጅ አይደለም። ምሳሌ አሁን አንድ ሀገር ከሌላው ሀገር ጋር ጦርነት መሄድ የለባትም ይላል ህግ ነው። ግን በጦርነት ብትሄድም አትሄጂም ብሎ የሚያስገድዳት አካል የለም። that means this is called law binding አይደለም ምንለው ለዛ ነው። ግን በአንድ ሀገር ላይ ያለ ህግን አንድ ሰው መግደል አይችልም። ከገደለ እስር ቤት ይገባል። so the national ወይም በአንድ ሀገር ውስጥ ያለውን ህግ የሚያከብራል የሚያስከብራል። በዓለም አቀፍ ህግ ላይ ግን ያንን የሚያስከብር አካል የለም። so they call this one an anarchic systems of international relation. So conflict is hence an inevitable and conventional features of international relation. Based on realities, conflict is inevitable and it will happen. It was happening in history, it is happening now, and they believe it will continue happening even in the future. So they believe international politics, like all politics, is struggles of power. And this struggles of power continues and that will result as a continuous war among countries in the world. And this idea of reality was the dominant idea or theory in the 1950s and 1960s. And they characterized a system what they call international anarchy. And as the world has no sovereignty to give this order. But with time, in addition to the liberalists and idealists, there was a development of another theories, or they are called constructivism or critical theories, which changes the foundations of dominant perspectives and argued for the marginalized and the voiceless. And one central area that sets realism and liberalism apart is how they view for human nature. And realists does not typically believe that human beings are inherently good. So as I said, realists doesn't believe human beings are inherently good, or they believe their potential for good is very limited. On the other hand, idealists believe that people are selfish and behave according to their own needs without necessarily taking into account the ideas of or the interest of the other peoples. So this is like very critical difference among the idealists and the liberalists. The liberalists believe humans are good, the idealists believe humans are selfish. And the conclusions I draw from this idea is very different. Liberals believe peace in the world is possible, whereas idealists believe peace in the world is not possible. And the liberalists, they dominated the idea in the 1920s and 30s, and this one in the 60s and 70s. So the realists believe conflict is unavoidable and perpetual, and so war is common and inherent to humankind. So they believe humankind are inherently, they love war, and that is the idea of the idealists. So both take the same world and view it very different. We are living in the same world, and these people who are promoting these different ideas take the world view in a very different angle. And liberals share an optimistic views of international relations. Liberals believe they are optimistic and the world order can be improved with peace and progress gradually by replacing war. So they believe like there will not be war in the future and we can create a lasting peace. Whereas realists tends to dismiss optimism. Instead, they arrive at a more pessimistic view about the world, and due to their focus on the centrality of the state and its need for security, so idealists believe like the world will there will be war in the future, and they concentrate on creating security and survival in anarchic world. And as a result, realists describe international relations as a system where war and conflict is common and periods of peace are merely times when states are preparing for future war. By going further, idealists believe that peace is not achievable. If there is peace in some specific times, that is just a time for states to be prepared for the next war. And what is common is both liberal. So they have also few commonalities among these two ideas or theories. So both liberalists and realism consider the state to be the dominant actor in the international relation. So liberals does not add roles of non-state actors as in the international relations. These liberalists want international non-state actors as also part of the international relation. Both think states should be the dominant actor, but liberalists believe non-state actors like international organizations should be included in the international relation. The third theory is called structural or Marxist theory of international relation. When you start from Marxism, it is an ideology that argues that it was an ideology in the 1960s by Karl Marx, which developed the idea that capitalist society is divided into two contradictory classes, the business class and the world class. አሁን እዚህ አገሮችን አንድ ሀገርና ሁለት ሀገር ብሎ ሳይሆን የሚከፍለው እዚህ አንድ ሀገር ውስጥ ያሉ ሰዎች በሁለት የተከፈሉ ናቸው ብለው ነው የሚያምኑት። The first class is business class when wealthy ወይም ሀብታም የሚባሉት ሲሆኑ the other is the proletarian or the working class, and the proletarians are at the mercy of the bourgeoisie who controls their wage and therefore their standard of living, and for hope for an event into a class society, and they should be overthrown by the proletarian. እንደሚለው ሀብታምና ድሃ እንደ ሀገር ውስጥ አለ። ሀብታሞች ድሃዎችን እየጨቆኗቸው ነው። ድሃዎች ሁል ጊዜ በሀብታሞቹ እየተጨቆኑ ነው ብሎ ነው የሚያምነው። So Marxists believe that by overthrowing the bourgeoisie, the Protestants, the proletariat should be the controlling factor in the country's politics. But when we come to in the international relation, we are not taking this whole idea of Marxism as it is. In the international relation, Marxism comes into play after the end of the Cold War. In the Cold War, Marxist was defeated, and the idea of Marxism or socialism wasn't no important, but its idea was further developed in the international relation. And it is developed as poor countries and rich countries. And the Marxists believe that both realism and pluralism concentrated on the inequality that exists within the international system. Inequality of wealth between the rich north or the first world and the poor south should get an attention. አሁን ምንድነው ብሎ የሚያስቡት ድሮ ማርክሲዝም በሐሳቡ እንዳለ ምንድነው ሀብታሞች ድሃዎችን የጨቆኗቸው ነው። አንድ ሀገር ውስጥ ሀብታምና ድሃ ይኖራሉ። አሁን ግን ወደዚህኛው ወደ ኢንተርናሽናል ሪሌሽን ደግሞ ሲያመጡት ምንድነው ሀብታም ሀገሮች ድሃ ሀገሮችን እየጨቆኑ ነው። ኖርዝ ይባላል ወይም ኖርዘርን ካንትሪስ ፈርስት ወርልድ ካንትሪስ ዩናይትድ ስቴትስ ኦፍ አሜሪካ ጃፓን ኤንድ ዩሮፒያን ካንትሪስ ሁሉም በአጠቃላይ እንትን ብለው ኖርዝ ይባላሉ። ኤንድ the south is Africa, there is Asia and there is South America, and they believe, the Marxists believe in the international relation these North countries or the first world countries are oppressing the southern or the third world countries, and they focus on the dependency, exploitation, and international divisions of labor, which pushed the vast majority of the population, the global population, into extreme poverty by elite groups within the society. how ምንድነው ኖርዝ ያሉ ወይም ሀብታም ሀገሮች ድሃ ሀገሮች ላይ ያሉትን ህዝቦች ወደ ድህነት እየመሯቸው ነው ወይም የድህነታቸው ዋና ምክንያት ሀብታም ሀገሮች ናቸው የሚል ነው ክሌም ይዘው የመጡት። this is the third theory, and they argued most states were not free. Instead, they were subjugated by the political, ideological, and social consequence of economic forces. Because the northern countries or the first world countries are very rich, they are influencing the southern countries, which includes Eastern Asia, Africa, and South America. And the class system that predominated internally within the capitalist society has its parallel global production center peripheral relationship that permanently permitted every aspect of international, social, economic, and political life. The rich societies in the rich countries are affecting the poor countries and the poor societies living on those countries. This is the idea of the Marxists in the international relation, and they claim the international system creates inequalities of benefit. That means the rich countries are getting the whole benefit and the poor countries are getting nothing. So this idea was mainly promoted by peoples or writers in the Latin America, in Africa, and in Middle East. This was the third theory or idea of international relation. The fourth is constructivism, the third theory. Constructivism highlights the importance of value and shared interests between individuals who interact on the global stage. So when we come to constructivism, they believe it is not the state, or it is not the rich, or it is not the poor which decides the international relation. They believe it is the individuals who are the main determining factors, and the value of those individuals are the main factors for the peace, for the war, and for everything. In the course of constructivism is that the essence of international relation exists in the interaction between peoples. What matters in the international relation, they believe what matters is the interaction among peoples. So they believe even if states are making interaction, አንድ ሀገር ከአንድ ሀገር ጋር ነው ግንኙነት እየፈጠረ ብንል እንኳን ሀገር የሚወክለው በግለሰብ ሀገር የሚወክለው በግለሰብ ስለሆነ በዓለም አቀፍ ያለውን ግንኙነት ወይም በሀገሮቹ መካከል ያለው ግንኙነት የሚወሰነው በግለሰቦች አስተሳሰብ ነው። ሶ የነዚህ ግለሰቦች አስተሳሰብ ትክክል ከሆነ በግለሰቦች መካከል አንድ አይነት ኢንትረስት መፍጠር ከተቻለ they believe we can create a better international relation. So in the international system is made from norms. We believe there are norms among different countries. አንዳንዱ ሀገር ውስጥ ያለ መሪ ጦርነት የሚፈልግ ሊሆን ይችላል። አንዳንዱ ሀገር ውስጥ ያለው ሰላም የሚፈልግ ሊሆን ይችላል። So they believe if we create a common norm, we can create that type of structure. That means if all countries or individuals in the most countries accept peace, we can create a peaceful world, or whereas if we accept anarchy, that means we create an anarchic world. If we accept anarchy, the system will be the same. If we accept democracy, the system or the world can be peaceful. That is the whole idea of this constructivism. The last idea, the last theory is critical theories. I think the theories are four, but it is five. Actually, it is five. And the last is it is critical theories. Critical approach refers to a wide spectrum of theories that have been established in the response to mainstream approaches in the field. So these critical theories are theories which is developed as a response to liberalism and realism. We say these are liberalism and realism are the most dominant ideas in the international relation. In these critical theories are developed as a response to these theories, and they oppose commonly held assumptions in the field of the international relations that has been central since its establishment. That means they oppose the whole ideas of liberals and idealists. And critical theories who take us, and they mostly take us the Marxist angle, and often argues that the internationalizations of the states as standards of operating principles of international relations has led to ordinary peoples around the globe became divided and alienated. They question the legitimacy of a state. ምንድነው አሁን ክሪቲካል ቲዮሪስ? ብዙ አይነት ክሪቲካል ቲዮሪዎች አሉ። ከነዚህ ውስጥ የመጀመሪያው ክሪቲካል ቲዮሪ የማርክሲስትን አንግል ይዘው የመጡት ክሪቲካል ቲዮሪዎች ሲሆኑ this angle believed that since the states are becoming the main actors of international relations, they are dividing the people, and they say the people should be the main central participants in the international relation, and they believe making an interaction at a state level is the main problem in the international relation. That means የግንኙነት ዓለም አቀፍ ግንኙነት በአገሮች መካከል ቢሆን ስለሆነ በአገሮች መካከል መሆኑ ብዙ ችግር ፈጥሯል። ስለዚህ ግንኙነቱ በግለሰቦች መካከል ነው መሆን ያለበት። ምክንያቱም አብዛኛው ግለሰብ ያለው ፍላጎት ዘሴም ነው። በኢኮኖሚ የተሻለ ሰላማዊ ኑሮ ምናምን ነው የሚፈልገው ነው። ግን በአገር ደረጃ ሲሆን የተለያዩ ፍላጎት ያላቸው political factors ስለሚጨመሩበት they believe it affects international relation. And the other critical theory is post-colonialist theory of international relation. And it is different from Marxism by focusing on the inequality between nations or regions as opposed to class. So these post-colonials are revolves around the legacies of colonialism, and they believe decolonizations of the world, the ideal or economic decolonization is very important. In the 1960s and 70s, there was political decolonization, and they still believe there is economic colonization going on in the world, especially poor countries are being colonized, and they are still under the colonizations of the rich country economically, and they believe there need to be a remedy to decolonize the situations and to become equally important, equally beneficial from the international system. And the origins of these post-colonialists are the Cold War period, when much activity in the international relation centered around decolonization and the ambition to undo the legacies of the European imperialism. Focused on the including the viewpoints of those from the global south to ensure that Western scholars no longer spoke on their behalf. So these post-colonial theories or post-colonialism proponents of international relations believe that the South or the country which has been colonized are still suffering from the impacts of colonization and they believe the ideas and the scholars and the writings coming from the Western countries are no longer representatives of the South. So let's see these ideas of or theories in a real example. These ideas in a real example. In 2001, there was a war between United States of America and Iraq. There was a bombing in the US. There was this tower, the World Trade Tower. It was bombed by the terrorists, and the United States went for war in the Middle East with Iraq because they believe the Iraq are the, or Saddam Hussein by that time, the leaders of Iraq, was the one who organized this terrorist action. So based on the ideas of these four theories, they explain this war or the relationship between US and Iraq in different ways. For idealists, they believe that international organizations appear to be successful when they are working in the interest of powerful states. So the realists believe the situation why United States went for war with Iraq is there is no one who can control United States. And even the United Nations, the organization which includes 193 countries, supports the United States because United States supports United States is a superpower in the international system. So the realists believe no one can make peace in the international system, and war is inevitable. On the other hand, liberals will argue that within the United Nations, international relations will likely be even more chaotic, devoid of responsible institutions to oversee relations between states and hold bad behavior to account. So the liberalists believe still, even if the United States went to war with Iraq, still international organizations are important. Still, they are contributing for the global peace. Even if the United States went to war with Iraq, there is still a consequence of bad image. And even there was no direct punishment, its behavior was irregular and so would be without consequence. There was consequence by other countries. The third one, the Marxists would argue that the international body, including United Nations, works to promote the interests of business class. So the realists believe it is international organizations only promote the powerful. Marxists believe international organization promotes the business people. Post-colonialists also would argue that the discourse presented by the United Nations is one based on cultural, national, or religious privileges, and the UN is not representatives of the global South. አሁን ምንድነው ይሄኛው ኤግዛምፕሉ የመጣው ዩናይትድ ስቴትስ እና ኢራቅ ወደ ጦርነት መግባታቸውን በእነዚህ በአራቱ ቲዮሪዎች እንዴት ማብራራት ይቻላል? ሪያሊስቶች እንዴት ነው የሚያብራሩት? ኢንተርናሽናል ኦርጋናይዜሽን ሊኖር ይችላል፣ ግን መኖሩ ያን ያህል ኢንተርናሽናል ዓለም አቀፍ የሆነ ሰላምን ለማስጠበቅ አይጠቅምም ነው። ምክንያቱም ያኛው ዓለም አቀፍ ኦርጋናይዜሽኑ ብዙ ጊዜ በትልቅ ወይም በፓወርፉል ሀገሮች ቁጥጥር ስር ስለሆነ ነው። ሊበራሊስቶች ደግሞ በቁጥጥር ስር ቢሆንም እነሱ መቆጣጠር ባይችሉም ስቲል ግን እነዛ ኦርጋናይዜሽኖች ባይኖሩ ኖሩ ዓለም አቀፍ አሁን ያለው ዓለም አቀፍ ሰላም ላይኖር ይችል ነበር። On the other hand, the Marxists believe የሚያደርጉት ምንድነው? እንደዚህ አይነት ትላልቅ ኦርጋናይዜሽን ብዙ ጊዜ በሀብታም ሰዎች ኢንፍሉዌንስ ስር ናቸው። ብዙ ጊዜ የሚያቀነቅኑት የሀብታም ግለሰቦችን ወይም ክላስ ኢንትረስት ነው ብለን። On the other hand, the post-colonialists believe that this type of organizations are controlled by the Western or the North or the rich countries, and the global South is still not represented by these organizations. So to conclude today's program, many people assume international relational politics is easy, but what you read in the newspaper or see on in the television looks clear, but in the academic study, international relations and politics is very complex. Just in the newspaper or in the media, we hear just what happened, but we don't know why that thing happened, what is the reason, who is behind that. And when you study international relations, the main goal is to understand the motive. So students of international relations need to go beyond alleged factors or photo opportunity and instead use the theories tools and analyze the situation. So it is not important to know what is happening in the world. What is important is why those things are happening. And you need to understand that one. So our understandings of international relations or politics is often about conflict views, and students need to comprehend the origins of such conflict views and consider their philosophy or theoretical basis. አሁን አረብ ሀገር ላይ ጦርነቶች አሉ፣ ሊቢያ ላይ፣ ሲሪያ ላይ ብዙ አሉ። ግን ጦርነቶች እንዳሉ ዜና መስማት ወይም ስንት ሰው ሞተ የሚለው ለኛ ምንም አይጠቅመን። የሚጠቅመው ለምንድን ነው ያኛው ጦርነቱ የኖረው ማን ነው በዛ በጦርነቱ ጀርባ የሚለው ማወቅ።